My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 43 years old, and this morning, the head of HR at the company I gave 22 years of my life to ambushed me with an ultimatum: get fired or go on disability. The catch: I had exactly 1 day to get the medical paperwork that normally takes weeks. So I did exactly what they asked. And that single act of obedience is about to cost them everything. The first time I realized something was broken inside me, I was standing in my kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring at the coffee maker like it was a puzzle I couldn't solve. My hands were shaking, not from caffeine. I hadn't slept enough to need coffee yet. They were shaking because my body had forgotten how to be still. Sarah found me there, still in yesterday's clothes, my laptop open on the counter showing lines of code I'd been staring at for 6 hours straight. "Marcus," she said quietly, "the way you talk to someone standing on a ledge. When did you last eat?" I had to think about it, really think. Lunch, yesterday, I think. That was 30 hours ago. I looked at her then, really looked, and saw something in her face that scared me more than the shaking hands or the missed meals. She looked tired. Not sleepy tired. Soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from loving someone who's drowning and not being able to reach them. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it, though I wasn't sure exactly what I was apologizing for. For missing dinner again. For the fourth weekend in a row spent locked in my office. For becoming someone she had to worry about instead of rely on. "I'm not asking you to apologize," she said. "I'm asking you to stop." But I couldn't stop. That was the thing nobody understood. The Tyler Morrison account wasn't just work. It was a living thing that had wrapped itself around my life like kudzu, choking out everything else. 11 years I'd spent building their infrastructure. 11 years of my expertise, my late nights, my weekends, embedded in every line of code. And they were threatening to leave. "If we lose Tyler Morrison, the company loses 40% of its revenue," my manager Derek had said during our last meeting, his voice carrying that particular blend of urgency and manipulation that managers perfect over years of squeezing productivity from exhausted employees. "I'm not being dramatic, Marcus. People will lose their jobs. Maybe dozens of them." He didn't say it, but the implication hung in the air. Maybe your job too. So I kept working, kept pushing, kept telling myself it was temporary, that once we got through this rough patch, once the migration was complete, once the client was happy, I could rest. I'd been telling myself that for 8 months. The panic attack came on a Tuesday. I was in a video call with the Tyler Morrison team, 6 people on their side, just me on ours because we'd already laid off 2 junior developers and hadn't replaced them. Their project manager, a woman named Janet with a voice like ice water, was walking through a list of concerns about our timeline. "We're seeing delays in the security protocol implementation," she said, her face pixelated and stern on my screen. "This was supposed to be completed 2 weeks ago. We had some unexpected complications with the encryption standards." I started to explain, but she cut me off. "Marcus, we're not interested in excuses. We're interested in results. Now, we need this completed by Friday, along with the data migration we discussed and the new user interface modifications. Can you commit to that timeline?" Friday was 3 days away. What she was asking for represented about 6 weeks of work. Maybe 4 if I didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't do anything but code. "That's not realistic," I said, and heard how weak my voice sounded. "The data migration alone requires." "Then I need to escalate this to your CEO," Janet said flatly. "Because from our perspective, this partnership isn't working." That's when it happened. My chest seized up like someone had reached inside and grabbed my heart with a fist. The room tilted sideways. My vision went spotty at the edges, little black flowers blooming in my peripheral vision. I tried to say something, anything, but my throat had closed up. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could process was that I was dying, right here, in front of 6 people on a Zoom call, and they were going to watch me die because I couldn't deliver their fucking data migration on time. Marcus, Marcus, are you there? I must have made some kind of sound because suddenly Derek was calling my cell phone, and Sarah was running up the stairs, and I was on the floor of my office with my laptop still open, still showing Janet's frozen, annoyed face. Breathe, Sarah kept saying, her hand on my back. Just breathe, baby. In through your nose, out through your mouth. But breathing felt impossible. My whole body was convinced it was dying, and no amount of rational thought could convince it otherwise. The ER doctor was younger than me, with kind eyes and tired shoulders that suggested he'd seen this particular crisis more times than he could count. Your heart is fine, he said, after the EKG and blood work came back clean. What you experienced was a panic attack, a severe one but not life-threatening. It felt like dying, I said. I know, that's how they feel. He pulled up a stool, sat down like he actually had time to talk, which in an ER probably meant I was officially not dying enough to be interesting. How long have you been under severe stress? I had to think about it. When had the stress become severe? When had normal work pressure transformed into this thing that was eating me alive? 8 months, I said finally, maybe longer. And how many hours are you working per week? I don't know, 70, 80. How's your sleep? Bad, 3, 4 hours a night. Appetite? I forget to eat sometimes. He nodded, making notes. Marcus, I'm going to be direct with you. You're experiencing burnout, severe occupational stress. Your body is shutting down because you've been running it past its limits for months. The panic attack was your body's way of forcing you to stop. I can't stop, I said. If I stop, I'll lose my job. If I lose my job. If you don't stop, you'll end up back here, or worse. He looked at me seriously. I'm giving you a referral to a psychiatrist. I want you to see them this week, and I want you to seriously consider taking medical leave. I took the referral. I even made the appointment. But I didn't take leave, because taking leave meant admitting defeat, meant letting down my team, my company, my client, meant proving that I couldn't handle the pressure after 22 years of handling it just fine. So I went back to work the next day. Dr. Patricia Huang's office was in a medical complex that always smelled like antiseptic and desperation. I sat in her waiting room for my first appointment, filling out intake forms that asked questions like, in the past 2 weeks, how often have you felt down, depressed, or hopeless? And how often have you had thoughts that you would be better off dead? I checked the boxes honestly, which was a mistake, because when Dr. Huang called me into her office, the first thing she said was, Marcus, I'm concerned about your answers to questions 9 and 10. I'm not suicidal, I said quickly. I don't want to hurt myself. But you've thought about not existing. I looked at my hands. Sometimes I just think about how peaceful it would be to not wake up, not in a violent way, just not waking up, just being done. That's called passive suicidal ideation, she said gently. And it's serious. It means your mind is so overwhelmed that it's starting to see non-existence as a viable solution to your problems. Hearing it said out loud like that made it real in a way it hadn't been, when it was just thoughts in my head at 3 in the morning. I need to go on medical leave, I said, don't I? I think you needed to go on medical leave 6 months ago, Dr. Huang said. But yes, definitely yes. That afternoon, I called Derek. I need to talk to you about taking medical leave, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. Is everything okay? No, I'm not okay. I had a panic attack last week. I'm seeing a psychiatrist. She thinks I need time off to recover. Marcus, I'm so sorry to hear that. Derek's voice dripped with concern that might have been genuine or might have been the corporate equivalent of offering thoughts and prayers. Listen, let me talk to HR about what options we have, but I have to be honest, the timing is really bad. Tyler Morrison is at a critical phase. I know, but I can't keep doing this. I'm falling apart. I understand. Let me see what I can do. In the meantime, is there anything we can adjust to make things more manageable? Move me to a different account, one with less pressure. Absolutely, we can work toward that. Let me start looking at options. That conversation happened in March. It was now June, and I was still on the Tyler Morrison account, still working 80-hour weeks, still having panic attacks that left me shaking and useless for hours afterward. Every 2 weeks, I'd ask Derek about the transfer. We're working on it, just haven't found the right fit yet. The client specifically requested you stay on. They trust you. Budget approvals for new hires got delayed. We're waiting on corporate. We interviewed someone, but they didn't have the expertise. We're still looking. Always an excuse. Always a reason why now wasn't the right time. Just a little longer. Just one more deadline. Just until we got through this phase. Meanwhile, Dr. Huang put me on medication. Antidepressants. Anti-anxiety pills for when the panic attacks came. Sleep aids because my brain had forgotten how to shut off. These will help, she said. But medication isn't a cure. The cure is removing yourself from the situation that's causing the damage. I'm trying, I said. They keep saying they'll move me, but... Marcus, they're not going to move you. You need to understand that. From their perspective, you're still functional, still getting work done. Why would they change anything? Because I asked them to, because I'm sick. She looked at me with something like pity. Companies don't operate on compassion. They operate on necessity. Until it becomes more costly to keep you in that position than to move you, nothing will change. So what do I do? You file for medical disability. You force their hand. The email arrived on a Monday morning in August. Subject line, meeting request urgent. From Diane Foster, Director of Human Resources. No explanation, just a meeting invite for Wednesday at 9 a.m. Attendees, me, Derek, Diane. I spent 2 days spiraling, Googling things like HR meeting urgent employee and getting fired warning signs. I told Sarah, and she held my hand across the kitchen table and said, "Whatever happens, we'll figure it out." But I could see the worry in her eyes. We had a mortgage. Emma was starting college next year. We couldn't afford for me to lose this job, not after 22 years of building my career here, building my life around this company's trajectory. Wednesday came. I logged into the Zoom meeting at 8:55 because even in crisis, even when your mental health is in shambles, you show up early. You're professional, you're dependable. Derek joined at 9:07. That should have been my first clue. Derek was never late to meetings where he had good news. Then Diane's video box appeared. Diane Foster was 52 years old, with the kind of polished appearance that came from expensive salons and a wardrobe budget that exceeded my annual salary. She was also, though it was never officially acknowledged in any company communications, married to our CEO Richard Foster. She'd been hired as director of HR 2 years after their wedding, despite her background being in marketing, not human resources. "Marcus," she began, her voice carrying that particular HR tone that managed to sound both friendly and completely devoid of humanity. "Thank you for making time for this meeting." As if I had a choice. "We wanted to touch base about your performance and some concerns that have been brought to our attention." My stomach dropped. Performance concerns. That was HR speak for "we're building a paper trail to fire you." "I've been asking for help for months," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've asked Derek repeatedly to move me off the Tyler Morrison account because the pressure is unsustainable." "We understand you've been experiencing some challenges," Diane said smoothly, as if mental health crisis was equivalent to having a tough week. "And we want to support you. However, we also have obligations to our clients and to the company. Tyler Morrison has specifically requested that you remain on their account." I'm having panic attacks, I said flatly. I'm on medication. I'm seeing a psychiatrist who says I need medical leave. Diane and Derek exchanged a look, some kind of silent communication that excluded me entirely from the conversation about my own life. Marcus, Diane said, folding her hands in front of her on camera, we're prepared to offer you two options. Option 1. We can proceed with a formal performance review process, which may result in corrective action up to and including termination. Option 2. You can apply for medical disability leave. The relief that washed over me was so intense I felt lightheaded. I've been asking to go on disability for months. Well, we're formally approving it now, Diane said, like she was doing me an enormous favor, like this wasn't what I'd been begging for. However, we need all necessary documentation completed and submitted by end of business today. The relief evaporated. Today, that's impossible. I need my psychiatrist to complete forms. I need medical records compiled. Those are the terms, Marcus. Diane's voice didn't change, didn't soften. We need this situation resolved immediately. Either you provide complete disability documentation by 5 p.m. today and we'll process your claim, or we proceed with option 1 tomorrow morning. You're setting me up to fail, I said, and hated how my voice shook. You know I can't get all that paperwork in one day. We're offering you a choice, Diane said. What you do with that choice is up to you. After the meeting ended, I sat frozen in my desk chair. My hands were numb. My mind was blank. Sarah appeared in the doorway. What happened? I told her everything, the ultimatum, the impossible deadline, the trap. They're trying to fire you, she said, and I could hear the anger vibrating under her words. They're manufacturing a reason to terminate you without paying disability benefits. I know. So what are you going to do? That's when something shifted inside me. Some fundamental understanding clicked into place. For months, I'd been operating under the assumption that if I just worked hard enough, if I was just loyal enough, if I just held on long enough, the company would take care of me. That my years of service meant something. That I had value beyond my productivity. But I didn't. None of us did. We were resources, assets to be managed. And when an asset became more trouble than it was worth, you disposed of it. They wanted to fire me and avoid paying disability. Fine. But they'd made a critical mistake. They'd given me marching orders. Clear, documented instructions in an email. Complete the paperwork by end of business today. I'm going to do exactly what they asked, I said slowly. Sarah frowned, but you said it's impossible. It is impossible. Dr. Huang can't complete a full disability evaluation in one day, but they told me to get the paperwork done today. So I'm going to drive to her office right now and make them watch me try. I called Dr. Huang's office. Her receptionist answered. I need to speak with Dr. Huang urgently, I said. It's about my disability claim. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, but Dr. Huang just returned from vacation, and she's completely booked for the next 3 days. She's not taking any emergency appointments. I don't need an appointment. I need 2 minutes, please. My employer is trying to fire me on a technicality and I need her help. There was a pause, muffled conversation. Then a different voice came on the line. Marcus, this is Dr. Huang. What's going on? I explained the meeting, the ultimatum, the impossible deadline. When I finished, there was a long silence. Where is HR located? She asked finally. Downtown, about 2 hours away with traffic. Give me their contact information, she said, her voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. And get in your car. Dr. Huang, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. How malicious do you want me to be? Despite everything, I smiled. You have my full permission to be as rude as medically necessary. Good, now drive carefully. I'll handle the rest. I left at 11:30. Traffic was predictably miserable. Construction on the highway. An accident near the downtown exit. The August heat made the asphalt shimmer like water. I should have been anxious. This should have triggered another panic attack, the pressure, the deadline, the uncertainty. Instead, I felt calm, detached, like I was watching myself from outside my body. I thought about the last 22 years. I'd started at this company when I was 21, fresh out of college with a computer science degree and more enthusiasm than sense. The company was tiny then, 15 people crammed into a renovated warehouse space. We didn't have an HR department. We had Sharon, the office manager, who handled payroll and ordered pizza on Fridays. Richard Foster, the CEO, knew everyone's name. He remembered that I was allergic to mushrooms. He asked about my mom's cancer treatments. When Sarah and I got married, he gave us a week off and a generous check as a wedding gift. Your family, he'd said. Then we landed the Tyler Morrison contract. Then two more pharmaceutical companies, a defense contractor, a major bank. The company exploded from 15 people to 300 in 5 years. Richard stopped learning names, started talking about optimizing human capital and maximizing resource efficiency. Hired professional managers from larger corporations who brought with them the vocabulary and methods of treating people like interchangeable parts. And then he hired Diane, or married her, or both. The timeline was unclear. Diane, who had never worked in HR before, but was very good at protecting the company from liability. Diane, who saw every employee request for accommodation as a potential lawsuit to be managed, rather than a human being to be helped. I remembered the last time I'd spoken with Richard directly. It was at the holiday party 2 years ago. I'd approached him to mention an idea I had for improving our security protocols. That sounds great, he'd said, eyes already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. Send that to Derek and he'll loop in the right people. He didn't remember my name. I could tell by the way he glanced at my name tag before responding. 20 years I'd worked for him, and he didn't remember my name. That should have been my sign to leave. But I'd convinced myself it didn't matter. The company had grown. Richard was busy. It wasn't personal. Except it was personal. It was entirely personal. Because at the end of the day, a company is just a collection of people making decisions about other people. And the people at the top had decided I was disposable. My phone rang. Dr. Huang. Where are you? She asked. About 10 minutes out. Don't park, just pull up to the entrance. I'm between appointments. There was a pause. I sent an email to your HR director 40 minutes ago. What did you say? That demanding same-day psychiatric evaluations for disability claims is medically inappropriate and potentially illegal. That proper documentation requires thorough assessment over multiple sessions to be legally defensible. That I'm documenting her demands in your medical file as evidence of workplace harassment exacerbating your condition. Another pause. And I may have mentioned that any termination proceeding without reasonable accommodation consideration would constitute a textbook ADA violation that my office would be obligated to report. I felt something loosen in my chest. Dr. Huang, you're incredible. I'm your doctor. Nobody messes with my patients. Her voice softened slightly. I'll meet you at the entrance in 5 minutes. Bring whatever paperwork they gave you. Dr. Huang met me at the medical building's entrance, exactly as promised. She was in her white coat, stethoscope around her neck, looking every inch the medical professional whose authority superseded corporate HR departments. She took the disability packet from my hands, flipped through it while standing on the sidewalk. This is insane, she muttered. Half these sections require coordination with your primary care physician. There are forms here that legally require a 14-day observation period. She looked up at me. They absolutely were setting you up to fail. There's no way anyone could complete this in 1 day. So what happens now? Now, she handed the packet back. I'm going to submit a formal letter stating that I'm your treating psychiatrist, that you require immediate medical leave for severe anxiety and major depressive disorder, and that complete documentation will be provided within 7 business days, which is the actual legal requirement. I'll copy their legal department. My phone buzzed. Email from Diane Foster. Subject: documentation timeline. Marcus, after consultation with our legal team, we understand that the documentation timeline provided this morning may have been overly aggressive. Please work with your healthcare provider to submit all necessary paperwork within 1 week. Let us know if you have questions about what's required. Diane. I showed the email to Dr. Huang. She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who just won a battle she shouldn't have had to fight. She got scared, Dr. Huang said. Good, she should be scared. What they tried to do to you today was potentially illegal, definitely unethical, and I made sure they understood that in writing. She put a hand on my shoulder. Go home, Marcus, rest. Let me handle the paperwork, and seriously consider whether you want to return to a company that treats people this way. The week that followed existed in a strange limbo. I wasn't working, but I wasn't officially on leave yet. I was just suspended, floating in bureaucratic purgatory while forms moved through channels. Dr. Huang was true to her word. Within 3 days, she'd compiled everything needed: medical history, psychiatric evaluation, treatment plans, a detailed letter explaining that I was not fit for work and required a minimum of 3 months' leave to recover. The forms went to HR. HR sent them to the insurance company. The insurance company requested additional documentation. Dr. Huang provided it. More waiting. Meanwhile, I started hearing things through former colleagues. Tyler Morrison was shopping around for new vendors. They'd been unhappy with our service for months, the same months I'd been drowning under their impossible demands. They were talking to competitors, getting quotes. Just thought you should know, my old work friend Steven messaged me. They're probably going to announce something soon. Part of me felt guilty, like I should warn Derek, should offer to come back to fix things to save the account I'd spent 11 years building. But a larger part of me, the part that had been to the ER with a panic attack, the part that took 4 different medications just to function, the part that had spent months begging for help that never came, felt nothing. Let it burn, that part thought. Let them see what happens when you grind people into dust. Sarah caught me smiling at my laptop one afternoon. What? She asked. Nothing, just, I think Tyler Morrison is leaving. She sat down next to me. How do you feel about that? I had to think about it, really examine the tangle of emotions in my chest. Free, I said finally. I feel free. The disability claim was approved 3 weeks after the initial application. My income insurance kicked in at 80% of my salary. It was enough. We'd be fine. But the real satisfaction came 6 weeks later. Tyler Morrison announced they were switching to a competitor. Not quietly, either. They issued a press release talking about their commitment to partnering with vendors who prioritize employee wellness and sustainable business practices. It was a polite corporate way of saying, your company treats people like garbage, and we don't want to be associated with that. The competitor they switched to. They poached 3 of our senior engineers in the process. Good people who'd also been drowning, who saw an opportunity to jump to a company that actually valued work-life balance. Losing Tyler Morrison meant immediate layoffs. 20 people in the first round, mostly junior developers and administrative staff. People who had nothing to do with the account, who'd done nothing wrong except work for a company that made terrible decisions. I felt bad about that. Those people didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of executive incompetence. But I didn't feel bad about what happened next. Derek got restructured. That's what they called it when they didn't want to say demoted. He was moved to a position managing one small client with no direct reports at 70% of his previous salary. Steven messaged me. Derek's losing his shit. Apparently he's been complaining to anyone who will listen that this is your fault for going on disability. My fault. For having a mental breakdown after months of begging for help. For being human instead of a machine. How's everyone else taking it? I asked. Honestly, most people think Derek got what he deserved. Everyone knew he was stringing you along. Everyone knew the promises about moving you to a different account were bullshit. That surprised me. I thought I was alone, that nobody else noticed or cared. Why didn't anyone say anything? Because we all have mortgages and kids and fear, Marcus. Same as you. Nobody wants to be the one who speaks up and gets fired. He was right. We were all trapped in the same system, all making the same calculations about what we could afford to risk. But the best part, the part that made all the pain and struggle and anxiety almost worth it, came 3 months after I went on disability. Richard and Diane Foster announced they were exploring strategic acquisition opportunities. Corporate speak for, we're trying to sell the company before it collapses completely. The company that had been valued at $80 million 2 years ago was now being shopped around for $30 million. Their equity, their retirement plan, their legacy, cut in half. And it was all because they'd been too greedy, too short-sighted, too convinced of their own invulnerability to treat their employees like human beings. I'm writing this from my new home office. It's smaller than my old one. We had to downsize slightly on the reduced income, but it has a window that looks out onto our backyard. I can see the tree Sarah and I planted when Emma was born, now taller than our house. I've been on disability for 6 months now. I see Dr. Huang every week. The medication has stabilized. The panic attacks have stopped completely. The intrusive thoughts about not existing anymore, those are gone too. I spend time with Sarah again. Real time where I'm actually present instead of mentally reviewing code. We cook dinner together, watch movies, talk about things that aren't work. Emma's starting college in January. I'll actually be able to help her move into her dorm, instead of promising I'll try to make it, and then canceling at the last minute because of some work emergency. Last week, a recruiter reached out about a position at a smaller tech company, fully remote, strict 40-hour work weeks, explicit policies against after-hours contact except in genuine emergencies, mental health support built into their benefits package, including free therapy sessions. The pay is slightly less than what I was making, but when I factor in that I wouldn't be working 80-hour weeks, the hourly rate is actually better. I'm considering it, taking my time, not rushing back into anything. Because here's what I learned, what it took a mental breakdown and 6 months of recovery to understand. No job is worth your health. No company deserves your loyalty more than you deserve your own well-being. No paycheck is valuable enough to trade your sanity for. I gave 22 years to that company. I nearly destroyed myself for them. And when I finally broke, when I finally admitted I needed help, their response was to try to trap me, to force me out on a technicality, to protect their interests at the expense of mine. But I survived, and I got to watch consequences unfold. Not because I did anything dramatic, not because I filed lawsuits or went public or tried to sabotage them, simply because I did exactly what they demanded. I complied with their impossible request, and in doing so, I exposed the cruelty of that request. Dr. Huang's email made them confront the reality of what they were doing, made them see, in medical and legal terms, that they were harassing a mentally ill employee during a health crisis. And that moment of accountability, that brief flash of fear that they might face consequences, revealed everything about who they really were. They didn't care about me. They never had. I was a resource that had outlived its usefulness, and they wanted me gone as cheaply and cleanly as possible. But sometimes the universe has a sense of justice. Sometimes the companies that treat people as disposable discover that their success was built on those people's backs. And when those people leave or break or simply stop carrying the weight, everything collapses. Tyler Morrison didn't leave because of me. They left because the company had been cutting corners and burning out employees for years, and eventually that caught up with them. I was just the most visible casualty. The engineers who left for competitors. They weren't leaving because I went on disability. They were leaving because they saw what happened to someone who gave everything and got nothing back. They saw the writing on the wall. The company's decline wasn't my fault. It was the inevitable result of leadership that valued short-term profits over long-term sustainability. That treated human beings like machines that could be run at maximum capacity, indefinitely, without maintenance or care. I was just the canary in the coal mine, the one who collapsed first. But I got out, and I'm recovering. And there's something deeply satisfying about being healthy and happy while watching the people who tried to destroy me face the consequences of their own cruelty. Diane Foster, the HR director who tried to trap me with an impossible deadline, is now the HR director of a company worth half what it used to be. She'll probably lose her job when the company sells, assuming they can find a buyer. Derek, the manager who strung me along for months with promises he never intended to keep, is managing one small account for a fraction of his former salary. Richard Foster, the CEO who stopped remembering employees' names, is watching his legacy crumble. And me, I'm sitting in my small home office, drinking coffee that I actually have time to enjoy, watching birds in the backyard, and feeling something I haven't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness exactly. I'm still healing, still recovering, still working through the trauma of what I experienced. But peace, the peace that comes from no longer being trapped, from no longer sacrificing my health for people who didn't value it, from finally putting myself first. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 43 years old, and I learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop. Stop working. Stop sacrificing. Stop believing that your loyalty will be rewarded. Just stop. And watch what happens when the people who took you for granted realize they actually needed you after all. The most beautiful revenge is living well, being healthy, being present for the people who actually love you. Everything else is just noise.